Hello everybody, I'm back with another video. This one's uncovering the scripture geography part 3. We all know how true the news is, right? And how important stories get buried. Well, I think one got buried in 1949. The New York Times, March 4th, 1949, The Dead Sea Scrolls a Hoax. On page 19, there's a half column taken up with a report headed Bible Scroll Find Suspected as a Hoax. It's by Dr. Zetlin of the Dropsy College, who splits with the scholars on the Dead Sea discovery. And we're going to cover that. I gave you the link here so you can look it up. This scholar they're talking about, he was no slouchy scholar either. He was the Solomon Zetlin, and was an American Jewish historian, a Talmudic scholar, and in his time the world's leading authority on the Second Commonwealth, also known as the Second Temple period. So it's not like some little person was saying this. It's a pretty big, important guy. And he believes the biblical manuscripts recently discovered by the Wandering Bedouins are not an important discovery, but a possible hoax. Now he's countering the article goes on and tells about the jars were found in the vicinity of the cave near the northern end of the Dead Sea Scroll, and the scrolls included the book of Isaiah, commentary on Habakkuk, and the secretarial document. These other scholars, Dr. John Trevor of Duke, Professor Miller Burrows of Yale, Professor Eleazar Shulknik of the Hebrew University, Jerusalem, maintained that the manuscripts belong to a pre-Christian era, making them the earliest biblical writings in existence. Now, why is that important? That's important because they want to try to say that there are old manuscripts, which we literally do not have of the Old Testament. That's another reason I think this is a hoax, because the New Testament manuscripts that we have, the oldest ones, are much older than the Old Testament manuscripts we have. If these are fakes, which I think they are. The article goes along, he gives his reasons for this, and I tend to agree with him. He said, he asserts these claims to the iniquity are not only open to doubt, but it's difficult to even defend the validity once the documents are subject to critical analysis. In his article, Dr. Zetlin advances a number of hypotheses to prove that the documents date back to the Middle Ages rather than to a pre-Christian era. He regrets that the Bedouin are not thoroughly interrogated by scholars, and that we do not have the jars in which they stated the scrolls were found. That's peculiar too. To establish the authority of the scrolls, he said, other overwhelming proofs must be advanced, and the jars produced to determine the dates. It seems that the entire find is not an important discovery, but a possible hoax. So he's given us a whole nother viewpoint. And we know that the ones that went to the Bible Museum in New York, many of them were deemed to be fakes, and then other ones that have been sold have also been deemed to be fakes. So what's going on here? I think it's the biggest Indiana Jones story that's ever been produced. Get all wrapped up in these Dead Sea Scrolls, I want to consider this. The alleged site where they were found. The Bedouin shepherds were grazing their sheep on these treacherous rocks, and then must have quite a throwing arm that high and far into a cave. And what are the sheep eating? Look at these locations. Who could throw a rock in there and break a jar and even hear it? And what were those sheep grazing on? This is insane. I mean, it's almost like we're being laughed at. To me, it's like, I can't even imagine. They're in the desert, on the edge of the Dead Sea, and I don't even think any animal could drink out of the Dead Sea. It's like, this is nuts. This is the actual cave that the Isaiah scroll come out of, they say. It's 1Q ISA, also known as the Great Isaiah Scroll. And look where that cave is. Would shepherds really be walking their sheep up on those rocks far enough to throw a rock in there and break a jar? I mean, that just looks insane to me. It's like it doesn't make any sense. Laughingly, but not funny, almost all the articles say right out of an Indiana Jones archaeologist discovered the 12th Dead Sea Scroll cave. To me, it's junk. This picture right here, see that scroll looking top head piece where they would roll the scroll? This is the museum actually, and it has a copy of the original, it says, because it's too fragile to be put on display. And when I Googled it, this is what I got: 7,940,000 results when I put in Indiana Jones plus Dead Sea Scrolls. That's insane. I mean, that's how many articles that tie these two words together. The worship in this area in Italy is primarily to a god deity they call Jupiter, but it's pronounced Yahweh. Way back then, all the statues and stuff had I-O-V-E, and the I sounded like a Y, the O a H, the V a W, and the E an EH. So this is literally Yahweh, and I believe this is actually the deity that they have put in the Old Testament. And we can connect Jupiter to the Old Testament directly, and most people don't even know this. But like in Genesis 14:18, it says, "And Melchizedek, king of Salem, brought forth bread and wine, and he was a priest of the Most High God." Okay, what I got when I looked at this, I was surprised because Zedek, this right here, the red, I've got it color coded. It goes directly over here to Morphics Hebrew Dictionary, and it's Jupiter. It can also mean justice, fairness, or righteousness, but it is primarily Jupiter as a name. And the Lamed on the front is an and this would be my, the little Yoda on the back of the word here, and my king, because Melech is king in Hebrew, and my king Jupiter, your king of Salem, in full bread and wine, and he served to God the uppermost or supreme, is what you would get if you broke it down in broken Hebrew. An interesting, Jupiter is from the Proto-Italic Deus, which means day or sky, and pater, which means father, thus father sky. In the Greek would be Dies or Zeus, also known as Iovis or Yahweh. He's the sky, god of the sky, thunder, the king of the gods. You know how it says in Psalms, Yahweh sits enthroned among the gods and the holy heavenly council of gods. He's like, they're likening him to the top god or whatever. And in Rome, he was like, his temple was the biggest one at the top of the heap of sacred way. Let's see. And people think that things changed when Christianity came about. Did not. It's still, Yahweh is still being worshipped, or Jupiter. It's just the same person and nobody knows it. And you know how when you watch a movie they say, by Jove? By Jove, I think that's where they got that from. It's crazy. Okay, what I did here was I broke down the word for you. Let's see if I can get the pointer. There we go. Okay. Zedek right here, and it's read from left to from right to left. It's always so weird. As Jupiter, and I showed you that in the Morphix dictionary. Okay, this Lamed that I've got color coded green, that means and. That is a prefix. Your suffix, the yod here in yellow, is my. And this word in blue is king, that's Melech. So, and my king, Jupiter, is what that verse is actually saying. And they've always, well, who is Melchizedek? Who is Melchizedek? It's right there in front of our face, and they know it. I guarantee you they know it. But I hope this will help you understand about my cards, too, when you see my cards. When you see me color coding like that, it's because I'm breaking down the prefix, the suffix, the main word, and what's actually there, so you can see how I come to the conclusion I came to. And that's just basic Hebrew. Your prefixes are like and your suffixes are your pronoun, and then you have your subject, you know. But I encourage everybody to study primarily Greek first and then Hebrew, because I know all the scholars will disagree with me, but I think that what we had in the first century was primarily Greek. Some Hebrew, but primarily Greek. It's also in Deuteronomy 16:20. It says, Jupiter, Jupiter, for the sake of Jupiter, Jupiter, you will live and inherit your land from which your God, Yahweh, gave you. Well, you could say this, also could read, for the sake of the righteous, righteous one, you will live and inherit the land which your God, Yahweh, gave you. Because it's interchangeable with justice and righteousness. So now we can understand these coins, that we understand who Jupiter is, okay? Because this coin here, which is called the Ficus Judicius, or Latin for Jewish tax, was a tax imposed on the Jews, they said, in the Roman Empire after the destruction of Jerusalem and its temple in 70 AD. The revenues were directed to the temple of who? Jupiter, or Yahweh. So the Jews are the Romans. This was not directed at the Jews. This was directed at the Romans, who are the Jews. And what they were doing is taking this tax, the Nerva, and giving it to the temple, which is Yahweh. Same one they're worshiping today. And they say it was, your historians are going to tell you it's to support the cult of Jupiter Optimus Maximus on the Capitol, served in commemoration of the Flavian victory in Judea, just as effectively as the monuments erected in Rome that call for the event. But this is actually a Jewish coin given to Yahweh, because Yahweh was the God that was in that temple. Here in the Encyclopedia Britannica from 1768, this is volume 12, page 195, it literally tells us in Latin that Jehovah's is a Latin for Yahweh. So they know this stuff. Yeah, see, it says belonging to the 14th, and Galatius is found arguing against the abbreviation of, because some people were saying, no, it can't be, but it was. It is the same, one and the same. They just pull the wool over everybody's eyes. We can see this was their opinion too, and like this is a extra biblical text, but it was written back at the same time of all this, and you can see in the Gospel of the Holy 12 that Yahweh was the same person, because you have the priest going to offer burn incense to Yahweh, and they've got it written as Jehovah. So there's just no way around this. This is Yahweh. That's who they considered Yahweh. And it's really funny because he's the lightning bolt, the eagle, and the oak tree are his symbols, and he's always surrounded. He said, "I'll bear you up on eagle's wings." He presents himself as clouds with lightning and lightning bolts, and then you're talking about the oak tree in there, the Elon. There's just no way around this. And the scholars should definitely know this stuff. It's crazy. We look at Julius, it's amazing. It's like Julius was the name of a Roman family, the most famously dictator Gaius Julius Caesar. His name literally means devoted to Jehovah, aka Yahweh, pronounced Yahweh, the Tetragrammaton. So even Julia and Julius Caesar and all that's devoted to Yahweh. And ironically, Judas and Judah in both Hebrew and Greek are the exact same words, no difference. So, how much of the New Testament is actually translated correctly? Probably tons of it is wrong. And I keep going through it, looking at it, and it's mind-boggling to try to figure it out. And Caesar was it's a cognomen. It's a surname for gens, and I'm going to talk about that later on. Gens is the Gentiles in the Roman thing. It's a contract of Jehovah, again, descended or pertaining to Jehovah. And Jehovah's probably that of Gaius Julius Caesar. And it was like an imperial title, but it's not really a title. They're wrong on that. It's a cognomen. A cognomen is a surname or clan name. It has nothing to do with rulership. Artist, I can't help but see this every time I look at the Jewish people. I mean, here is Julius Caesar right here in this bust thing. Look at him upside of Henry Aberson, the Jewish historian. I mean, they could be twins. It's crazy. As an artist, if I was drawing, I'm like, oh my gosh, they look just alike. He's smiling here, but if his mouth was shut, you would really see it. Because you can even see the little, like the indentations here in the mouth area, and the little wrinkles around the eyes, and this little bridge thing here, even the shape of the eyebrows, the forehead, and the nose. My gosh, you can't miss it. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but if you draw and you're a portrait, you do portraits, you cannot miss this stuff. And this right here is a compound word, and this is what they tell us it means: he shall be praised. But when you break that down, just throw it in the translator and see what you get. That's what you'll get right there. And that's kind of scary, isn't it? This is from WordSense. And if you look here, I'm not kidding, it's a noun, and that's what it means. And it can also mean this right here, too. That's scary, too. But everything is for a reason. Everything is for a reason. I'm not reading these out loud because I don't want to get another strike on here, but just take a look at them and read them for yourself. In Acts, we're told they were calling also Barnabas Zeus and Paul Hermes, since he was the leader speaking, and the priests of Zeus that are before their city, the oxen and garlands unto the porches, have brought with them the multitudes did wish to sacrifice. And having heard the apostles Barnabas and Paul, having rent their garments, did spring into the multitude, crying, why are they wanting to call them these foreign gods? It's because on their temple, their priests are the Jewish priests. Look at this. I mean, you got your red heifer here in the middle, and this is a relief, so you know where we're looking at. It's a relief from Emperor Marcus Aurelius. performing a sacrifice, and all the priests have Jewish sidelocks, every one of them, and they have a red heifer. Here's the complete picture. I blew up this part so you could see the sidelocks. And I cannot believe I hadn't seen this stuff before when I was studying art history. But I just didn't connect because we're not taught this. It's like we've been indoctrinated and we've been shoved down our throats the lies till we can't even see the truth when it's right in front of our eyes. You know, maybe that's what they meant in the Old Testament when the rocks would call out from the wall. You know, it's like people will start seeing. It's tons easier to see it is one and the same when you're looking at the Latin versus the English version. If you were reading Latin, then you would see it a lot quicker because they had the College of Pontiffs in ancient Rome. These were 4 chief colleges of priests in ancient Rome. Now, when you go to look at the Latin, like in Mark 15:11, it says, "But the chief priest stirred up the crowd to have him release Barnabas for them instead." Now, when you look in Latin, the word for priest is pontifex. It's the same as this word here. It's just that's a plural. But it's amazing, you know. And then when you come down to John 19:50, they cried, away with him, crucify him. Shall I crucify your king?" And the chief priest answered, "We have no king but Caesar." Now, when you look at the word for chief priest, again, it's pontifex. It matches the ancient Roman Empire. But people aren't going to see it because they're not reading it in that language. And they had four groups, and Josephus gives us 4 major groups for the Judaism also. It's like it's the same thing. And they were worried about insurrections constantly, just like the Romans were, because they're one and the same. Here's a Roman priest, and they say it's from 215 AD. I don't think so. I think this is 1st century. Just looking at the reliefs on that, the other thing I just showed you. But it definitely has the Jewish sidelocks and the Jewish-looking cap. They wore the same caps also. The apex was a cap worn by certain priests, the flamens in salvia in ancient Rome. But look at your Jewish high priest. It's the same kind of cap. And let's see, the essential part of the apex, to which alone was the name properly belonged, was a pointed piece of olive wood, and the base was surrounded by a lock of wool. This was worn on the top of the head, and 2 strings or bands, which were called apitos or apetises, though the latter word is also interpreted to mean a kind of button by which the strings were fastened under the chin. And these white caps were made of what? Look at that word right there. Of the victims that were sacrificed to Yahweh or Jupiter. So they were wearing these things and they were made out of that. That's scary. And they were fastened by what? An olive twig. And that's also a Jewish thing, is the olive thing. I gave you a reference on this so you could go read it if you want to. What can we say about these law tablets? Did you know both Rome and the Jews say that they had lapazulu or blue sapphire law tablets with the law on them? Yep. In the Roman tradition, oaths were sworn to Jupiter or Yahweh on the lapis of the Jupiter stone located in the temple at Capitol Hill. This is one and the same tablets, people. The Roman tradition is it was called an oath stone, and you swore an oath to Jupiter or Yahweh. And this is recorded even as far back as like 1907. They were talking about this, so they've known about this a long time. And they called him a despiter. That word in Greek is also in the Old Testament several times, referring to Yahweh. You can double check me on that, but it's there. Do thou, despiter, strike the Roman people as a strike a pig here today, and strike them the more as thou art greater and stronger. That's just a quote they were quoting. And then they talked about the connection to the Jupiter lapis stones. According to the Talmud and the Mishnah, the tablets were made of blue sapphire or lapis-zulu and were from the pavement of the throne in heaven. And that comes from Exodus 24:10. But I think it's ironic that both are claiming to have blue lapis-zulu stones. And there has been literally nothing that I have checked that did not line up with this. Even like when you get down in your prophecies like Jeremiah 9:11, I will make Jerusalem to be a heap of sand and a den of dragons, and I will make the cities of Judah desolate for want of an inhabitant. Look what's happening to Italy. This is from the New York Times in 2017. Italy is dotted with more than 6,000 abandoned hamlets and villages, while another 15,000 have lost more than 95% of their residents. Depopulation has left scars and turned the towns into heaps of stones, ruins, crumbling roofs, and former dwellings covered in a lush vegetation. They are offering homes for $1 to $5 in many places in Italy just to get people to come live there. Now, I don't know what the migration of the Africans into Italy as immigrants is going to do to this situation, but I mean, I think a lot of the culture will be lost when the population gets so mixed up, and I think that's the plan. But this is actually fulfilling the prophecies in Jeremiah 9. Tell you something mind-blowing that I never saw, and I just can't believe that I've gone all these years and didn't see this sooner. I'm thankful to see it now, and I hope more will see it, but it's very scary that we could be in a religion worshiping and practicing that we don't even understand what is there. And yet we're so, I mean, people fight online about all this. I mean, they fight about the text, and they fight about the Old Testament, and like following Hebrew roots and stuff, and it's like they have no clue what they're doing at all. And if you don't believe me, just keep watching my videos. Eventually it will sink in that we've been lied to. But it wasn't Jesus that sat on the judgment seat and was the king of Israel and was anointed. It was Herod and Pilate. Yes, I said Pilate. I know people, that's going to blow people's minds. But in Acts 4:27, we have in English, for of truth against the Holy Child, Jesus, whom thou hast anointed, both Herod and Pilate, Pontius Pilate, with the Gentiles and the people of Israel, were gathered together. Now, when I looked at that sentence and made sure it was accurate, this is what I got. For indeed, in truth, they conspired against the Holy Child, your Jesus. Herod and Pilate, Pontius Pilate, both being anointed with the nations and the people of Israel. And how do I know this is accurate from Acts 4:27? All you got to do is go back to John 19:13 and Matthew 27:19. It's both of them tell you that Pilate was sitting on the judgment seat. And then you go back to the Old Testament, Proverbs and Psalms, you know that nobody sits on the judgment seat unless they're anointed king of Israel. And John writes, therefore when Pilate heard these words, he brought Jesus out and sat down on the judgment seat at a place called the Pavement, but in Hebrew it's Gabbatha. In Matthew 27:19, while he was sitting on the judgment seat, his wife sent him a message saying, have nothing to do with this righteous man. For last night I suffered greatly in a dream because of him. And this right here saying righteous man, that was James the Just, who is also called Jesus Christ according to Josephus. That's why she's using righteous man. So she was actually warning about James the Just. And you can read these others from the Old Testament, but I'm telling you, it's there. Fragments of parts of text, and you can see here from Papyrus 66, the story of the adulterous woman, which other Christians have written in their gospel, was written about a certain Papias, a student of John, who was declared a heretic and condemned. Eusebius wrote about this. There are laws in that matter which Pilate, the king of the Jews, wrote of. Sorry about that, my buzzer's going off. But we have Pilate being king of the Jews written by Eusebius, one of the church founders. It's amazing. Once we realize this, we can see other things too, like Luke 13:1. There were some present at that very time who told him about the Galatians, whose blood Pilate had mingled with their sacrifices. So Pilate also was a high priest. And who are the Galatians? They're the Gentiles, because the land of Zebulun and the land of Naphtali, the way of the sea beyond the Jordan, is the Galilee of the Gentiles. We learn that in Matthew 4:15. A lot to take in. In our text, if they really looked at it carefully, they would also know that Pilate was a Jew, because a couple of times it tells us he is. Luke 3:1 is one of the places that I was looking at, because it's like, and there are in, let's see, the sovereign prince or leader of Tiberian Caesaros, which means descended from Yehovah or Yahweh, ruling Pontius, the name of the gens, and that was originally a Samnite, afterwards Roman. Pilate means armed with a spear. the Judean. And they have being governor of Judea, but that's not what it says. It says the Judean of the Galatians or circuit was Herod Philip, of the brother of Herod Philip. This is very hard to read. And it has the word Uturia. I'm going to talk about that too. But there's so much interesting stuff in here. I mean, just totally interesting. Because this word right here is the Judean. So they've turned and twisted this stuff around. And when you look the word up, you can see it means a Jew or Jewess, either a female or a male. Most people don't realize, even though we have like Judges 11 in the Old Testament, where Japheth, sacrifices his own daughter, but it doesn't click in their brain for some reason. But when I was going through and looking at a lot of the Hebrew in the Old Testament, I came to Exodus 12:21, and it says, he called Moses to all the elders of Israel, and he said to them, pull and take out of you, or your sheep, of the multitude, from your families, and slaughter the Paschal lamb. Well, the lamb is actually the word for a crippled or lame person. Now, how do I know that? Okay. All these little neku here, the little accent marks, weren't until the 11th century AD or CE. So they were not present. So these words are identical. One of them is the Passover, and one of them is the lame. And it literally meant a lame person, a real person. And you can see that to pass over, when you come down here, to be lame, to limp. It's like they're the same word, people. Human sacrifices all throughout the Old Testament, and people don't even see it. When we get to the construction of the Second Temple, they said it lent a new significance to the festival of the Passover, which is the lame person. The Talmudic passage from Second Temple period describes the temple ritual on the 14th of Nisan. The description reflects the procedure at the time of the first temple. So this is 115 BC to 70 AD. Okay. The Paschal lamb was slaughtered, or the lame person was slaughtered, in 3 groups. When the first group entered the temple court was filled, the gates of the temple were closed. The Torah and again Tekah were blown on the shofar. The priest stood in rows, and their hands were in the basins of the silver and basins of gold, and an Israelite slaughtered his offering. And the priest caught the blood. The priest passed the basin to the fellow priest, and he to the fellows receiving a full basin and giving them back an empty one. The priest nearest to the altar tossed the blood against the base of the altar. While the ritual was performed, the Levites sang Hallel. Okay, and that's from the Talmud Pishkim 64a. Okay, so when Pilate is mixing the blood of the Gentiles in with his sacrifices, and they're tossing them on the altar, then that's the same thing they did according to the Talmud. There are several biblical references indicating that the procedure was followed in Solomon's temple also. Following the rededication of the temple by King Hezekiah, the priests are described as tossing the blood of the Paschal lamb, or this lame person, upon the altar. It's just sick. And nobody even knows it's there. That's what's so scary. And ironically, Pilate is connected also with Italy. And people don't see that either. He was governor of Judea, and Herod was the tetrarch of Galilee, and Philip was tetrarch of Iturea. Iturea is actually a big section of Italy right there by Rome. Okay. The second inscription, which has been lost, this is talking about a second Pilate stone. They found a Pilate stone, and legend says that Pilate died in exile in Ameria. Ameria is in Italy, okay, and they found a stone inscribed to Pilate, just like the other Pilate stone, but it's missing, of course. It's gone, it's lost, they say. But this is this is a photo, and it's like, so there was a second Pilate stone in Italy. We can even see this connection to Italy and the Romans being the Jews in Philippians 4:21 through 23. It says, "Salute ye every saint in Christ Jesus. There salute you the brethren with me. There salute you all and saints, and specifically those of Caesar's house." Why would he add that? Because they are the Romans. "And the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ with you all. Amen." I mean, it's laughable. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. There are two more verses that tell us that the Jews are the Romans. Luke 23:2. "And they began to accuse him, saying, We found this fellow perverting the nation," okay, "and forbidding to give tribute to Caesar." So they're saying their nation and giving tribute to Caesar, saying that he himself is a Christ and a king. So they're likening Caesar the Christ and king. John 19:15. "And they cried out, away with him, crucify him. Pilate said unto them, Shall I crucify your king? The chief priests or pontiffs answered him and said, We have no king but Caesar." So they're one and the same. It's amazing. This one right here, look at that bust, man. He's a priest. He's got the side locks. He looks just like Skobat off of Tanakh Talk. They all mirror these busts. It's crazy. And here we have another verse, Acts 17:5. "But the Jews or Judeans which believed not, moved with envy." This could just be part of them, the Judeans which believed not, the ones that weren't believing, "moved with envy, took unto them certain lewd fellows of the baser sort, gathered a company, and set all the city in an uproar, assaulted the house of Jason, and sought to bring them out to the people. And when they found them not, they threw Jason and certain brethren unto the rulers of the city, and these have turned the world upside down, are come hither also, whom Jason hath received. These all do contrary to the decrees of Caesar, saying that there is another king, one Jesus." It's like, so to say that Jesus was king would say that he's undermining Caesar because that's their king. But people don't see it even though we're reading it right out of the text. What I'm showing you here is the Jews are the Romans, one and the same, according to the New Testament. This is something nobody's going to show you. Like Adam Green and some of these YouTubers that want to deconstruct that Christ even existed. It's like, you can't. It's everywhere. The proof is everywhere. You're just not looking in the right place. Okay, this is a graffiti of Chrestus that's in the Palace of Tiberia on Palatine Hill in Rome, Italy. Okay, Chrestus is another word for Christ in Latin. This writing also has the word Pilate on it. Now what we see here is two crosses, and a crucifixion happening. But what you don't see in this picture is the one they found on microscopic. There's a third cross in the middle that that was taken off to try to hide this. Okay, it says, the translation says, Croesus, after having been beaten with rods and having been condemned to die, has been attached living to the cross. So the inscription even tells us what it's about. And it's scratched on the level ground close at an angle of passages which lie under the structures adjoining the Bridge of Caligula and the neighborhood of the Civilis Victoria. The building is a gallery made by Caligula to connect the palace with the forum. Let's see, it says, later incorporated into Nero's Domus Transitory. It's part of the Farnese Garden. And it's just called the Crucifixion, and it's in the Palace of Tiberius. So who would did Pilate write his letters to? Tiberius. So who do you think this is about right here? And when do you think it was put on that wall? They're trying to say it was put on there later, but I don't think so. There's no way. And this I found about it. A third cross with a hanging rope behind the central figure is visible on microscopic analysis. So you can actually buy a copy of this print of this, even though this wouldn't be copyright because it's so ancient. But I gave you the web address where I found these pictures, so you can go look at it if you want to. But this is real. I mean, there's no way they can deny that this happened. Because he's even looking, it's like he's carrying up the little sign that they're supposed to put up there, the King of the Jews thing. That's what it looks like. This is hilarious. You can't say it did not happen. And some people believe, because of the crudeness of the picture, that it was done by the soldiers who were active part of the crucifixion on Calvary. So that being the case, then you would know where it happened. It happened in Rome and did not happen in the Middle East. It's amazing. You can read this too. I gave you, this is from the same site where they had the picture for sale. It's a print. I don't know what people say. Oh, but that was a Roman form of capital punishment. That was not a Jewish one. Well, they need to go read the Torah then, because they don't know the Torah. Because in Deuteronomy 21:22, this is how people were killed. If a man had committed a sin worthy of death, he is to be put to death, and thou hang him on a tree. Well, when you look at the word for tree, it's talah, eretz, and it's to hang up for display, but with pieces of wood. So this is exactly, and it even says, his body shall not remain all night upon the tree, but thou shalt wisely bury him that day. So all this junk about that people don't die on the same, that's just bunk, man, because it's like, it's in the Torah that the same day they're hung up, they have to be buried that day, just like Jesus was. A replica of a gibbet, which is the way they see it says, especially to gibbeting, hanging up, suspending. And this is a gibbet that they found in the UK. It's a replica, but this kind of gives you an idea of what it would actually look like. I just thought this was interesting. The Old Testament Torah law forbid gibbeting beyond sundown. See, they even call it the same word, of the day the body's hanged up on the tree. And that's because it's so weird to say on the tree. And in Luke he said, if they'll do this when the tree is green, what will they do when it's dry? Well, you can see all the distortions they've done once the tree got dry and it was in printed word. It's like they've messed with it big time. And gibbeting was one of the methods said to be used by Tacitus. So we know that this was used by the Romans. This was the Roman settlers in the destruction of Lodium or London. Now, I looked back at this verse, Luke 3:1. There is so much information in this verse. It's like, now in the 15th year of the reign of Tiberius Caesar, Pontius Pilate being governor of Judea, is what they have in the English. There's some problems with that, but I'm still looking at that verse. Herod being tetrarch of Galilee, which meant the circuit, and his brother Philip, tetrarch of Iturea, and the region of Trachonitis and Liasis, and tetrarch of Abilene. Okay, well, when you look at the word Iturea, I believe it is actually this area here. They spelled it with an I, and we have it in an E in the Latin, and it was a region of central Italy, located in an area that covered part of what is now Tuscany, Arezzo, and the northern and western Umbria. And Umbria is where the Pontius Pilate stone was found. All this ties together. And see, our Strong's tells us it's a district of Palestine beyond Jordan. But it comprised this whole area right in here. And it was the Etruscans that actually, they think, originated in this area. I blew this up a little bit more so you could see here, but this lighter area up in here, I believe, is Judea. And I'm going to show you that also. I hope I put it in this one. I don't know if I put it in this video or the next one. These are so long. But the people of Iturea, identified as Etruscans, they influenced way up into here in the Po Valley and way down in here. This is a map. They expanded about 500 BC to these other areas. They started out in 750 BC. And they went way down in the southern region too. And out to the island there. This is a breakdown of that, of the verse, Luke 3:1, that was done by the Bible Language Tutor on YouTube. And I just went through and looked at what he got. He said, in the year 15 of the reign of Tiberius Caesar, when he was governor, Pontius Pilate, and he's got but I think it's the Judean, and what was tetrarch of Galilee, Herod, Philip, and of the brother of his was of Iturea, there's that word, and Trachonitis, the region of Lycerius of Abilene, was tetrarch. And Lycerius of Abilene was tetrarch. So Lycerius is actually, he's calling that a name. But I just wanted to show you how I go through and I listen to other scholars too to see how they break it down and to see if it matches what I think it is on these verses. And there's 2 or 3 of them on there, and I've tried to talk to him about things like the DE word. See, he just blacks it out. And I think that sometimes it just means like of, because in the Latin thing, sometimes it will mean of. And I think John was mixing up Latin, Greek, and Hebrew, and even some French in these verses. Okay, when I was looking at this too, and you go to like Bible Hub and look there, it even says of Judea. So that I'm not the only one seeing that, Other scholars are seeing that too. But what I got when I broke it all down was, in the 15th year of the prince or ruler, and Tiberian can mean from the Tiber, Caesar, Pontius Pilate, and if you look at Caesar, it means descended from Jehovah or Yahweh. Pontius means a man from the sea, and Pilate means armed with a spear, of Judea, and tetrarch are the four chiefs of the Galileas, or the circuit: Herod, or heroic Philip, a lover of horses, and his brother Tetrarch of Iturea and Trachonitis, a rugged region of country is what that means, and Licinius, that drives away the sorrow, of Abilene, which meant the grassy meadow, Tetrarch, meaning four lords or rulers. Now they're saying Tetrarch means four lords or rulers. I think that's right, but I do know that the Tetrarchy was a system instituted by the Roman Emperor Domitian in Diocletian, in 293 AD to govern the ancient Roman Empire by dividing it into two emperors. So that's why I think that only Pontius Pilate and Herod were the anointed kings. It's because it was divided into two. But I just thought that was interesting. And Caesarus means descended from Jehovah or Yahweh. So I took the Latin too. And when you translate the Latin, you get Pontius Pilate of Judea. Same thing. Or the Judean. It's like I got the same thing in the Latin that I got in the Greek. I showed y'all in the Matthew 24 video that I go through and literally check this stuff in the I don't know why that's not working. It should be working. Oh, there it goes. My pointer wasn't working. Check it in the Latin. The reason I do that is because Latin is the medical language thing, and I was a registered nurse, so I can read the Latin pretty well, and I also took 4 years of Spanish, which is a Latin-based language. So if I'm having difficulty with something, I'll definitely take it into the Latin and break it down and look at it. But what I got when I checked this in Latin was in the year 15th of the empire of Tiberius Caesar, procuring or managing Pontius Pilate of Judea, the Tetrarch, and of Galilee, Herod Philip of Galilee, and his brother, his Tetrarch of Iturea, and also Trachonitis, the rugged region, and also Licinia Abilene, the Tetrarch. So I've essentially got the same thing, and this Iturea is the same spelling, the I and the E, interchangeable, I believe. But I just wanted to give you this breakdown in case you want to look at it, because this is the Latin. And Latin's just easier than Greek. I'm sorry, but it is. I wanted to talk about this word Caesar here, Caesarus. That is a Roman cognomen, which is a surname or a clan name. I always thought it was like the title for the Caesars, for the emperor, but it's actually a surname or clan name of the gens people, or the tribe. And Julia means descended or pertaining to Jehovah or Yahweh or Iovis. Okay, and it's like Caesar could apply to anybody that was from a certain clan. It's a clan name. It doesn't necessarily have to be like the emperor. But I guess with the movies and all, we always think of the emperor, but it's the gens, or the tribe of a person. And Galilee literally meant circuit, and we're going to talk about that too, because that's interesting. But I just wanted to go over this particular word because it's a proper noun. It's a cognomen, a surname, or a clan name. And this is why I think the I and the E are interchangeable. Okay, when you look at the Latin, Eteria, okay, it's the same word. Because when you look at the pronunciation, it's an I spelled in, when you look at the English, they have it spelled with an E. This is why this happens, because the long I in Latin makes an E sound. In a tangerine, like I makes an IH sound in mid. So tangerine, and it makes the same sound. So these would have been interchangeable back and forth. It's kind of like the B and the V thing. But I wanted to let y'all know that. And I know, I told you this first pilot stone they found, which just happened to walk away or get lost. How do you lose a big pilot stone? I don't know. On purpose, probably. But anyway, it was found in this region, the region that we're talking about. So this makes perfect sense. There is so much proof in this video, it's unreal. Okay. A 2,000-year-old gravestone of a Jewish woman named Claudia Astor or Esther. Presumably she was captured after the fall of the Second Temple in 70 A.D. and was brought to Rome as a slave, was discovered in southern Italy now. This is Esther's green epitaph stone. Her gravestone was a major archaeological find. They say it provides concrete evidence of the existence of Jewish captives in the area. But does it? I think it proves that Italy's actual area things occurred, not the Middle East. The ancient inscription, the Roman freedman Tiberius begs the reader to take care of the remains of the woman he loved. Although only a few Latin words are chiseled on the marble slab, historians and archaeologists have been able to piece together a remarkable story. They assume that Astor or Esther in Hebrew was sold in Rome after the failed Jewish rebellion against Rome, a time when the survival of the Jewish nation was at stake. That's their take on it, though. The inscription on this stone reads, Claudia Esther, or Astor, captive from Jerusalem, Tiberius Claudius Proclus, imperial freedman, took care of this epitaph. I ask you to make sure, through the law, that you take care that no one casts down my inscription. So he's even mentioned in the Jewish law. But this is Esther's tombstone, and we find it in southern Italy. Here's the actual article, and I hate to do this all the time, but I'm actually making screenshots of things because things I talk about in the video, well, guess what? They disappear offline. Like the whole article, the whole web page. So I'm doing screenshots from now on. But this is a 2,000-year-old love story and inspiration for a rebel daughter. And it just tells you the same stuff that I've been telling you. And that way you have a copy where I found it. The discovery of this historical stone was the inspiration for a historical novel that somebody wrote also, Rebel Daughter. Claudia Esther, and it tells you the same stuff I just read to you, but this is just further screenshots. And I'm giving you the whole thing so you can read the whole thing. And with what I know now, this is pretty laughable. How did a Jewish woman and a Roman man, whose peoples were fierce enemies, find each other? And how did they fall in love? It's kind of laughable at this point. Biblically, Queen Esther is an orphan raised by her uncle Mordecai and is eventually married to a king, Ahasuerus, and she does not reveal her Jewish heritage to the king and learns of a plan to kill all the Jews by the king's advisor Haman. So that's, you can read the book of Esther. Some people don't even count that as a valid book, I think, because it doesn't mention, I don't think it mentions Yahweh in there. More proof. Jeremiah 9:11. It says, "And I will make Jerusalem to be a heap of sand and a den of dragons, and I will make the cities of Judea desolate for want of an inhabitant." Look at all the dragons that are in Rome. And Revelation, we've also got the dragon. I think Yahweh is the dragon. If y'all have watched my video on that stuff, you'll know where that's coming from. But it's pretty interesting that this matches so well. These are shots from the Vatican also. I find amazing and still is the calendar. All the fights about the calendar. That's a Roman calendar. That can't be Yahweh's calendar. Oh, yes, it is, because they match. Okay. March 17th was important ancient Roman for 3 reasons. They tell how they set aside the first fruits for Jupiter. Okay, so what do we have on the Jewish calendar? First fruits for Yahweh at the same time? This is not a coincidence. The Feast of Trumpets for the Jews occurred on the first day of the Hebrew month of Tishri. This holiday was a time of pilgrimage to Jerusalem to begin the 10-day purification. Okay, and we find here about the Romans, they had the Tribilistrum, which was a purification of the trumpets, is named in the fact that this day is the trumpets are used for the ceremony. Lusturium are purified in Shoemaker's Hall. And I got this from an ancient book on the Latin language and stuff from 1938. So we've got the same holidays, but the 2 different, for Jupiter and for Yahweh, they're one and the same. That's why everything matches. We look at the Roman Passover and the Jewish Passover, the same temple, the same deity was being worshipped, and they were worshipped at the same time. It's like the observance of the first Passover in Palestine is mentioned in the book of Joshua. Here it says Israelites, led by Joshua, successor to Moses, kept the feast at Gilgal. When the second temple was completed in 515 BC, the entire biblical ritual of Passover was restored. Okay, so it was in keeping with the temple. The historian Josephus records the contemporary Passover celebrations, which he estimated the participants who gathered in Jerusalem to perform the sacrifice in the year 65 CE were not less than 3 million. That would not fit the Middle East. There were not that many people there. Okay, King Agrippa once wished to take a census of the host of Israel, and he said the high priest, "Cast your eyes on the Passover offerings," and he took the kidneys of each. 600,000 pairs of kidneys were found, twice as many as those that departed from Egypt. Okay, these numbers don't match. Excluding those who were unclean and who were a distant journey, and those were not a single Paschal lamb for which more than 10 people had registered and called it the Passover of the dense throngs. With the destruction of the temple, the offering of the Paschal came to an end. Okay, when we look at the temple for Jupiter, which is actually Yahweh, it was vowed Quinius during the Battle of Saturium was built on the Palatine. Palestine? Palatine. Gee, how similar. Across the temple of Jupiter Saturn, after 295 BCE. According to Ovid, the day of dedication of the temple was the Ides of April. And what time do we have? Everything, it's like we've got the same dates. April 5th through the 15th, April 13th. Temple anniversary, temple anniversary. Sacrifice is done, sacrifice is done. They kept a fast, they kept a fast. It's like these line up exactly. And this was when they were subsequently restored things back to the worship of Jupiter or Yahweh. And fasti is the plural of Latin fastus, commonly used as a substitute. The word derives from fast, which meaning that which is permitted. We've got the same thing happening, the same dates, and both of them to temple rededications. This is not a coincidence. That's why the calendars line up. You can look no further. The calendars are correct if you're following Yahweh. The priestly customs are the same, okay? Leviticus 21:1, and the Lord said to Moses, speak to the priests, the sons of Aaron, and say to them, no one shall make himself unclean for the dead among his people. He shall not go into any undead bodies or make himself unclean, even for his father or for his mother. None of the offsprings of Aaron who has a leprous disease or discharge may eat of the holy things until he is clean. Whoever touches anything is unclean through contact with the dead, a man, or who has an emission of semen. Okay, number 6, 1 through 6 is like, and Yahweh spake to Moshe, saying, speak to the children of Israel and say to them, when a man or woman does separate by making a vow of a Nazarite to be separate to Yahweh, all the days that he separates himself to the Lord, he shall not go near a dead body. Okay, so what do we got over here? The burial customs and the pollution of death in ancient Roman burial. Burial customs and the pollution of the death in ancient Rome, even in the imperial civic function. Those who were polluted could not make a sacrifice or legally perform any public offices. That came from Livy. It was therefore very important for priests, particularly the priest of Jupiter and the other spiritual leaders as well as those in public office, not to be contaminated by the contact with the dead. The contamination could be incurred by touch, or in the case of the priest, by indirect contact, such as sight of the dead person. Such beings were philosophical groups believed to house the souls of the dead. Priests were not allowed to eat or even touch them. Indeed, they were not supposed to mention them. And then that's from Finney, historian. I gave you reference on that. The concept of pollution of the dead was partially founded on religious beliefs, but the onset was a base of pragmatic consideration which saw the presence of the dead as having an unhygienic implications. In the course of time, regulations were less strict, applied and replaced measures. By the end of the 2nd century AD, the notion had been significantly weakened. But we have identical priestly laws. And this word, I wanted to go back here and look at this word circuit, because the circuit, which is Galilee, had to do with the chariots and the horses, okay? The earliest chariot races in Rome were those held at 2 festivals, the Consulua and the Equeria, on the Campus Martius. Most Romans believed that these dated back to the time of Romulus himself and the foundation of Rome. However, by the time Rome became of great importance, these races had declined, and the focus of chariot racing had switched to the circus. The Romans had inherited the idea of a chariot racing in a circus from the Etruscans. In much the same way, the Etruscan gladiatorial combat was originally associated with a religion from a cult of Saturn. So too was their chariot racing. The Etruscans may have raised chariots in honor of Consuls, their god of the underworld. The original idea of racing a circuit, or Galilee, could be that they were circling the mouth of hell. Other theories have included the idea that the races were agrarian festivals linked to the goddess Ceres, the circular course representing the cyclic nature of the agricultural year. But I just wanted to point out that it literally meant circuit, or the racing is like the racing that was in Rome. Okay, now let's look at this ancient map. This is a map of ancient Italy from 800 to 222 BC. Okay, you can purchase this if you want to buy a stack of them for $12 each, and there's another price, but I gave the web address, so if you want to get a copy of this, you can. But it's like, here's the smaller version right here, and I left all this because I want people to see where this stuff is coming from. All right, there's Etruria right there, which is in Luke 3:1, and here's your Galilee right there. It's like you can't make this up. And this is Umbra right here, where the pilot stone was found. And you can go to this website and you can look this and blow it up and look at it. I mean, it is what it is. This is where it happened. What else is interesting is when you blow this up and you compare it to what we have now, they did the same thing. They just repeated it in the Middle East. Because you've got, okay, up here we've got uh, the Nazareth, right there, Nazareth, in the purple. If you follow the arrow down here, there it is in the purple. I color coded this. Okay, we've got the Galilee in green, and you follow that down, it's the same. You've got the Lake of the Garden, you've got Lake Garda, and you follow the blue. And then you got Genoa right here, and then you have Genoa down here. So the map that we have for the Middle East, they just copied the map that was actually here. It's very interesting. I'm totally just blown out of the water every time I look at this stuff. This, I just blew it up so you can see it better, because it was kind of small on that one, but I wanted to show how proportionate from one map to the other. But when I blow this up, you can really tell that this is almost identical. And this is Syria right here. It's not Syria in Greek, it's Syria. And Luna, I think, is Jericho, because Jericho means the moon, and Luna means moon. They just took everything and superimposed it in the Middle East, I think. Y'all can come to your own conclusions, but this is my conclusion. And they say they don't know what Judas Iscariot meant. Okay, Iscariot, okay, if you go up here to, this is according to the old dictionaries, Ish-Karath was a town in Judea, and Ish was an island near Naples, Italy, and Karat was used for the horse-drawn carrier in the Roman Empire. And I actually did a screenshot of that dictionary right there. It says Ish Karat is one of the Karat in a town in Judea, Ish an island near Naples. Okay, so it was chariot driver. And we know that Papias says that Judas walked around the world a sad example in piety, for his body having swollen to such an extent that he couldn't pass where a chariot could pass easily, was crushed by a chariot, and his bowels gushed out. And in Acts we have now this man, it was being Judas, purchased a field with the reward of his iniquity, and falling headlong burst asunder in the midst, and his bowels gushed out. And it was known unto all the dwellers of Jerusalem, insomuch as the field is called in the proper tongue Asadama, and that is to say the field of blood. And basically what it was is he was a chariot man, and he was probably from, because it meant both, he was from Karath, a town in Italy near Naples. And here's a picture of it, and this is where it was located. It's an island of Isha, Campesia region of southern Italy, and it lies northwest of the entrance of Bay of Naples, opposite Cape Messino, and just southwest of Naples. It's oblong in shape. It's about 21 miles in an area of about 18 square miles. The island consists entirely of volcanic rock at Mount Epimo, I think is how you say that, an extinct volcano. The date of the first eruption is estimated to be about 2200 BC, with an eruption in the 7th century BCE. The Roman scholar Pliny the Elder drove away the first Greek settlers and another in 470 BC, but the Syracusan garrison to fight. There were several eruptions in Rome. So he was talking about the eruptions when they occurred. And so this would have been Escarit right here. And it's in Italy. Record mention of the chariots of iron too in Judges 1:19. And Jehovah is with Judah, and he occupied the mountain, but not to dispossess the inhabitants of the valley, for they have chariots of iron. So he is making a distinction between the ones with the chariots of iron. And the word Phiram itself comes from the Semitic languages via Etruscia. So they even know where the language came from, the Etruscans. And it meant brass, or brass chariots. Emperor Claudius and the Etruscan language. Claudius I was a very important emperor who greatly expanded the territories of Rome. He was also fascinated with the Etruscans, and is believed he was a descendant from the noble family from Etruria. He composed a history of them in 21 volumes and a dictionary of their language. Sadly, this work have all been lost, and this means the ancient people of northern Italy remain somewhat mysterious. So we don't know who these people were. Maybe they were the Jews, the actual Jews. And this was an actual chariot they found, and it's from 6th century BC, the second quarter of 6th century BC. But I find it real interesting that, all this ties together. And in Acts 12:12, this is a location. That doesn't mean that they called John the name Mark. Because when I broke down this scripture, we have in English, and when they had considered the thing, he came to the house of Mary, the mother of John, whose surname was Mark, where many were gathered together praying. Okay? Well, when I looked at it, I said, have seen others also both stay here at the house of Mary, the mother, John's mother, that is called Mark's Square, where they were present. See, this is telling you where they are. Macron was actually Mark's Square. And Mark's Square is still there in Venice, Italy. And it's still known by the same thing. They were praying at Mary's at Mark's Square. She must have been living at Mark's Square. I'm just amazed when I look at this stuff. And this is named Macron, okay, this square in Venice. And look at the flag. It's still the symbol for Mark. The windows are the same. Macron is a commune in the metropolitan city of Venice, the region of Veneto, northern Italy, is where Mark's Square is. And we know that. And they even called him the Macron, which is the same word for Mark's Square. More proof. Deuteronomy 22:8. When you build a new house, Then you shall make a parapet for your roof, so that you do not bring blood guilt on your house when one falls from it. Okay, a parapet is a low wall at the edge of the balcony or the roof. And when you look in Italy, all the houses have these parapets. And it was because it was written in the law that they have them. I mean, I couldn't make all this up. This is the Roman baths. This is an old place, and this is an ancient Roman villa. And you could see there's the parapets on all the roofs. The actual Lorica Plumata, the vest for the Roman soldiers, is mentioned in Psalms 91:4. He shall cover thee with his feathers, and under his wings shall you trust. His truth, the shield and the buckler. So he's talking about a shield, a buckler, and a war vest. And their vests match what we have in the Old Testament. This is wild. This is known to be the only surviving Roman scutum or shield that there is. Now, of all these Roman soldiers, you know there had to be more. They had to have destroyed them. But this is the shield. And look at what's on it. And this is what got me. It's like you got angels and trumpets and eagles and the Lion of Judah. There's just no mistake in this. You know, it's like this has to be the same things. I just can't believe this is the only one that's surviving that they have of the ancient ones. The hundreds and hundreds of bathhouses in Italy. Now, what do they do? The Jewish people do? The mikvahs. It's like this, everything fits Italy. It fits it exactly. Like this is an article, wasn't too long ago, 21, September 21, women's ritual baths closed by Jerusalem chief rabbi due to promiscuity. But you have the same kind of bathhouses, exactly the same that we had in Rome. But you don't see all this number of ancient ones in the Middle East like you see in Italy. I mean, the thing is covered in ancient bathhouses. Great divide between the Gentiles and the Jews. Okay, where does this come from? I think it came from the gens, or the gents. It was a Roman, Italic, or Etruscan family consisting of individuals who shared the same nomen or name and claimed descent from a common ancestor. The distinguishing characteristic of the gens, the nomen genticum, Gentile name. It's even called a Gentile name. So the gens, or gents, of the Roman Empire were your Gentiles. Every member of the gens, whether by birth or adoption, bore the same name. All nomen were based on their nouns as a personal name, occupation, physical characteristics, or behaviors or location. You can continue to read all this, but it's basically telling you that the Gentile name is the gens. Okay? And we look at the Sanhedrin 59A2, and I gave you the web address. You can go look at that and read it directly off of Sefaria. Rabbi Yohanan says a Gentile who engages in Torah study is liable to receive the death penalty as stated. Moses commanded us the law, or the Torah, an inheritance of the congregation of Jacob. Okay, so any of the Gentile reading the Torah study would have been liable for a death penalty. But these are the Roman people. Julius was from the Old Latin Eovis, descending or pertaining to Jehovah or Yahweh, Jehovah's, the ancient Greek Aeolus, downy first beards of hair, or young man is what it meant. But it was Julius was a Roman nomen or name for Gentile or a gens. See, they even know it here. This is from Wiki about the family surname. But you can tell that it says Gentile or gens. Same thing. When you look at the coins from 270 to 73 AD, they were separatist. Okay, the genitives were let's see, where is it? It was a conflict of orders, like a political thing. Um, it was a social class, a monolithic social class of people. It's like the way it was divided. The Pharisee and the gens is a Roman thing. It's not a Middle Eastern thing. The whole Jewish insurrection at the time of Vespasian was clearly a religion, ethnic separatist movement. Boeotia revolt in 60 AD is another example of an ethnic revolt against the Roman rule, they say. But the Pharisees and the gens are both Romans. It's a civil war. They would separate out elites and commoners in ancient Rome. The plebeians were called the plebes, and they were generally the body of free Roman citizens who were not patricians or determined by the census, in other words, commoners. Both classes were hereditary. The conflict and struggle of orders was a political struggle between the plebeians, or the commoners, and the patricians, the aristocrats. So basically what you have is your Pharisee, which is your aristocrats, and your Gentiles, which is your commoners and clan people. And it was a big fight between what you were born as. Basically, the Phoebans were excluded from magistracies and religious colleges. See, they were trying to keep certain ones separated away from the religious part and only allow certain ones to be religious leaders. The Pharsalia, or the Pharisee. Delbellio Silvia on the Civil War, more commonly referred as the Pharsalia, is a Roman epic poem written by Lucian, detailing the civil war of Julius Caesar and the forces of the Roman Senate, led by Pompey the Great. The poem title is reference to the Battle of the Pharsalus, or the Pharisee, which occurred in 48 BC, near Pharsala Thalassia. I can't pronounce it, man. My pronunciation is terrible. I'm sorry, guys. Especially, I lost a tooth, and I've got to get something done about it, but it's giving me a lisp. So if I sound funny, it's because I have a lisp until I get that tooth repaired. Caesar decisively defeated Pompey in this battle, which occupies all the epic seventh books. In the early 20th century, translator Duff, while arguing there's no reason for judgments, can rank Lucian among the world's greatest epic poets, noting that his work is notable for Lucian's decision to eschew divine intervention and downplay supernatural occurrences in the events of the story. But he's basically just telling us what was going on between the Pharsalia and the Gentiles. It's like it was like a war between the gens and the Pharisees. This got me questioning the dates on stuff, and I don't know still. I'm kind of caught in a rock and a hard place. The Ficus ruminalis was the wild fig tree that had a religious and mythological significance in ancient Rome. So all this fig tree stuff comes from Rome. It stood near a small cave known as the Pericle at the foot of Palatine Hill, which would have been in Rome, and was the spot where, according to tradition, the floating makeshift cradle of Romulus and Remus landed on the banks of the Tiber. Okay, so it's associated with the legend of Romulus and Remus, and there was on the banks of the Tiber where they were abandoned, and it's thought to be located in the Verbum, a short distance from the Lupercal. The tree offered the twins shade and shelter in the suckling of the she-wolf. just outside the nearby cave, the Lupercal Cave. And I have a picture here of that. Until their discovery and fostering by the shepherd Faustus and his wife Achaia Laurentia, I think is how you pronounce that. Romulus was eventually killed by Romulus, who would on the found Rome on the Palatine Hill above the cave. So this actually occurred right here, this Palatine Hill right there, and this is where Rome was founded, was in Palatine. Okay, and they say Jesus died in 33 A.D. Then we have Suetonius mentioning Christ in Rome between 41 and 54 A.D. after the Ascension date, and in 58 A.D. the fig tree is withered in Rome. And James the Just died in 62 A.D. So that's why I think he was the Christ one, because this would have even fit the fig tree withering in Rome, because the fig tree is a Roman thing. And I think that and I don't want anybody to lose their faith over this. It's like, I'm going to tell you right now, Jesus is real, but there were two Jesuses in the New Testament. Everybody hates me for saying it, but it's true. You have Jesus bar Abba, who was Jesus, son of the Father, and you have Jesus called the Christ. And Christ was either a proper noun or it could be a proper name. And it also meant Messiah, like for the Jewish Messiah, a political king that was anointed by the elders and the priest. And it could not have called Jesus the Christ, because he would have had to have been anointed as king by the elders, and that never happened. But the dates are off somehow. I don't really think they're off. I think that James the Just was actually the Christ, the one that Jesus called the Christ, and there was the one that came from Father in heaven, which was Jesus bar Abba, and bar Abba means son of the Father. Now I've done videos on that, so go and watch them. Don't let this let you lose your faith. The truth has set us free. It sets us free from lies. And he said that we know the truth, and the truth will set us free, and I think we're getting it. We're going to butcher a lot of these words, but I'm trying. The statue of the she-wolf was supposed to have stood next to the ficus, or the fig tree. In 296 BC, the Curia, Atlas, Gallius, and Quintus Agunus, I can't pronounce that, images of Romulus and Remus as babies suckling from under her teats. It may be a sculpture group that is associated on the coins. The Augustan historian Livy says that the tree stood in his day, so he's recorded that it was literally there in his day. But his younger contemporary Ovid observes only a vestigial traces, perhaps the stump. A textual problematic passage in Finney seems to suggest that the tree was miraculously transplanted by the augur Augustus Novus to the Comitatum. The fig tree, however, was the Ficus Navidium, and it was called the augur. Tacitus refers to it as the Ficus Navidia and the Arbor Romulus, as identification that suggests it replaced the original Ficus Romulus, either symbolically or after the older tree's demise, or literally having been cultivated by an offshoot. The Ficus Navidium grew from the spot that it had been struck by lightning and was thus regarded as sacred. Any obscure reference may be to the statue of Atenius Navidia in front of the Curia Hostila. He stood in the letus, raised in the attitude that was connected to the Ficus Navidia, an accompanying representation of the she-wolf to the Ficus Romulus, as if the tree had crossed from one space to another. Where the Ficus Navidia drooped, it was taken as a bad omen for Rome. When it died, it was replaced. In 58 A.D., it withered, but then revived and was put forth new shoots. Okay, here's a relief by the Institute of Study for Ancient World from New York, um, United States of America, the Pluity of Trajan. Okay, on the front here we have, there's the fig tree in Rome. See it right there? And then you have all the dignitaries and stuff around it. But this was a big deal. And this withered in 58 AD. Here are scriptural accounts. Mark 11:11. And Jesus entered into Jerusalem, into the temple, and when he looked around and upon all things, now eventide was come, he went out unto Bethany with the 12. And on the morrow they were come from Bethany, he was hungry. And seeing a fig tree afar off having leaves, he came to, happily he might find something thereon. And when he came to it, he found nothing but leaves, for the time of the figs had not yet come. And Jesus answered and said to no man eat fruit of this thee thereafter forever. And the disciples heard it. Okay. And they had come to Jerusalem. Jesus went into the temple and began to cast out them that sold and bought in the temple, overthrew the tables, the money changers, and the seats of them that sold doves, and would not suffer that any man should carry the vessel through the temple. And he taught, saying unto them, It is not written, My house shall be called of all nations a house of prayer, but ye have made it a den of thieves. And the scribes and the chief priests heard it, and sought how they might destroy him, for they feared, because of all the people was astonished at his doctrine. And when evening had come, and they went out of the city, and in the morning they come back, and they passed by, they saw the fig tree dried up from its roots. And Peter, calling to remembrance, said of him, Master, behold, the fig tree which thou cursed is withered away. And Jesus answered him, said, Have faith in God. For verily, in the end I shall say to you, that whomever shall say unto this mountain, Be thou removed, and be thou cast in the sea, and thou shalt not doubt in his heart, shall believe that those things which he said shall come to pass, he shall have whatsoever he saith. So this is very big statements about it. And the mountains, be thou removed, were removed. Everything was moved. Everybody says that the Old Testament is a monotheistic book, but it's not. I wanted to show you where there's a goddess in Isaiah 7:14 that was worshipped in Rome and is also in the text. And this is a biggie verse because a lot of people know this for, being the Mary, or think it's it actually indicates the birth of Jesus Christ and what they think. But when I analyzed 17, it's like they have, therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, the virgin shall conceive, bear a son, and shall call his name Emmanuel. Okay, what I get when I look at the actual Hebrew is, therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign, and it is the maiden Hannah and her son, and read his name Emmanuel, are our people, the name Hashem. Okay, this is pretty interesting because when I check every word, and I go to Demorphix and check it, and I check it at different, different translators too, just to see what I get, and that way I can. But when I check it in a regular one, and you put this word right here, Herna, it comes out Herna. Okay, and they have it as maiden, but it's actually Herna. It's the goddess Herna. So I got that she's gonna give son to one that will, that'll be named Hashem, which is wild, because this is the name Hashem right there. And most people don't see that. But I'm going to show you how they are still worshiping this deity today. So when you go and look at the Greek, it also is the same thing, because Herna bears the title of Parthenos, and that's what we have in the Greek is Parthenos. So you get the same thing when you go to the Greek as you do in Hebrew. See Parthenos, and they say it's a virgin, but they don't tell you in Strong's or Thayer's that it's also Herna. You have to just kind of know that. She was an Olympian, queen of the gods, queen of heaven, was considered a virgin, a creatrix. She was Greek goddess primarily, but it's actually in the text, in both the Greek and the Hebrew. What we had in Rome was Jupiter or Zeus, but Jupiter is pronounced Yahweh. It's Yehovah, and it's the same as Yahweh. He was the king of all gods. Jupiter was equivalent to the Greek Zeus, the god of the sky, lightning and thunder. And you know, it says in the Old Testament he's wrapped in lightning, like when you read 2 Samuel 22. He was said to have had 2 brothers and 3 sisters, and their father was Saturn, who passed away, and his 3 sons, Jupiter, Neptune, and Pluto, divided the world up, and with Jupiter claiming the heavens. The Romans saw him as a protector of all the laws in the state, with the time being at a place of a state of business and sacrifices. So they were giving sacrifices to him, and also he was the keeper of the law, which goes right along with the Old Testament. Juno, or Herna, because she's known by both names, was the queen of all deities. Juno, the wife and sister of Jupiter. So this was his wife and our sister. She was the protector of Rome. Differing from the Greek counterpart, instead of being a jealous queen, Juno was a beloved goddess of marriage, overlooking women, particularly those who were married, protecting them. And on the 1st of March, there was a large feast dedicated to her, and she was one of the most anticipated events in ancient times. The Vestals guarded the sacred objects of Herna, the Vestals Penis, including the Palladium, which was a statue of the phallus Athena. See this thing right here? That's it right there. And to me, I think this is probably the rod of buds, you know, that they talk about in the Old Testament. And it was supposed to have been brought from Troy, and presumably a wood phallus used in fertility rites, and at least one triumphal procession, perhaps a slug beneath the triumphal general's chariot. So they carted it around and had like this big feast thing and all that to it, you know, like the big festivals and stuff. We see many remnant symbols of her, like the Statue of Liberty. Here's an old one of the goddess, and here's another one. Like I said, she's equated with Herna, queen of the gods, in Greek mythology, and is goddess of love and marriage. I'm probably going to butcher this, people, but I'm going to try. The name Juno was also thought to be connected to Io. This is from Wiki. This is some more information on her. As Diano or Diego or Diana at the beginning of the 20th century, derived was purpose from fun Venus, which is youth, and was syncopated with the heifer, or the other youth word. The etymology is widely accepted after this guy here, George Westlaw, related it to the Latin ion through the common Indo-European root. So they kind of had to go around and figure this who this was. But basically, on your statues and stuff today, if you visit Rome, you're going to see Juno. But Shanika is also, it's another word for Juno. It means the same thing. It means Queen of Heaven, which is the Queen of the Jews, is Shanika. I'm going to show you how they're still worshiping her today, too. In some inscriptions, Jupiter herself is called Unitus, which is one of the epitaphs of Jupiter Avist, a superlative form of Eluin, which means the youngest. She's one of the two deities that refused to leave the capital when the building of the new temple of the capital, Jehovah or Yahweh, required an excavation of deities who already occupied the site. So I guess they took those out and put in these two. Juno is equivalent to Herna, the Greek goddess of love and marriage. Juno is a Roman goddess of love and marriage, so they're both the same. Ancient etymologies associate Juno's name with erere, which is to aid or benefit, and rejuvenate, sometimes connecting it to the renewal of the new and waxing moon, which is where they get their moon worship. Shanika, or Et Yehov, Asherah, Inna, Shanaka, means who dwells. Et Hov means, oh, that's one. And Asherah means, and Emma means mother. So that's where they get the words for them. You know, one of them meaning who dwells, one meaning that's one, and one meaning mother. Shanika is spelled Shanikai or Shanikai, and is known in Kabbalah as the ancient form of the Jewish mysticism and is called the Shanika in Arabic as well. But given the accent of Shanika or Shanikaya is according to the Jewish way of calling the alphabet Shin and Shini as Shin. Shanika is one of the emanations of God and is the actual presence of God according to Judaism. See, it's like in Judaism, this person right here is deified. The belief was that one could see God in its fullness, they could not see the God, but they could see the emanation of the God, the Shanika. When Moses asked to see God, it was the Shanika that he saw. Shanika is also the cohort or bride of God. As such, she is the mother to us all, just as the God is our Father according to Jewish thought. Okay, y'all know I don't believe that, and the Et Havo is another name for Shanika's feminine divine essence. In Kabbalah, Et stands for Aleph to Tav, the 1 to 22, like the Alpha to Omega. It stands for the same thing. Here, Et refers to a song itself in the ultimate speech of hymn or prayer. According to the notes of Daniel Shanan Matt's translation, the passage from the Zohar is recited in the Sephardic liturgy on the Sabbath Eve. So on the Sabbath Eve, they have a prayer they say to her, to the Shanika, which is Herna. So it makes sense that Herna is in Isaiah. Herna is the third Greek goddess to have borne the title Parthenos. Legends and cultic activities concerning the Olympian queen of gods indicate, in her earliest form, she was likened unto Athena, Artemis, which was considered the great virgin creatrix. So she was like the virgin creator deity. Her icon is usually, she's as a matriarch, like a mature woman, and upright enthroned with crowns and a diadem. Sometimes she has a veil, like a married person. She's a patron of goddess of lawful marriage. She presides over weddings, blessings, legalizes marital unions, and protects women from harm during childbirth. Her sacred animals were the cow, the cuckoo, and the peacock. She is sometimes shown holding a pomegranate and the emblem of immortality. And her Roman counterpart, of course, is Juno. So it's the same deity. It's like Jesus Barabba told us that we would know the truth and the truth would set us free. It's like everything that I have learned has been pointed directly from him. And it's like when he was saying that of those born of women, none was greater than John the Baptist, but the least in heaven will be greater than him. He was letting you know he was not born of a virgin. That in Herna's the queen of heaven and earth and the underworld. She's like she's in the Parthenon of the Greek Parthenon. So the Jews are literally worshiping the Greek Parthenon. This is an article on her here. You can read it if you want to. It's just an abstract about her. It's the feminine origin of all things. Queen of the gods. Queen of heaven. She's got all those titles. Here we have the Argento, Italy temple to her. And there's another temple at Pompeii. There's a fresco of her at Pompeii. Let's see, and mentioned in 2nd Maccabees, not long after this, the king sent to Athena's senator to compel the Jews to forsake the laws of their fathers and cease to live in the laws of God, and also to pollute the temple in Jerusalem, which is called the Temple of Olympian or Zeus. Gee, I wonder why they took 2nd Maccabees out, you know? But I just wanted to point that out. And point out that there are temples to her there, and there is frescoes and stuff. And this is a screenshot of them talking about her on Tanakh Talk. In the women's world, Tanakh Talk. Okay, and here's the Herna, the daughter of Kronos and Re, was associated with all aspects of the life of women, the goddess of women, marriage, and childbirth. She's known by the Romans as Juno. I've already told you that, but I'm just going to repeat it. Here's the link if you want to go see this video. Here's at time marker 1532. Now we as women in the Tannan, and there's something really beautiful that happens on the Sabbath, and it's the Shalah, the Shabbat Queen, which means the woman of valor, which is something that is sung on every era of the Shabbat, on every Friday evening, as it originated in the mystics of spots and specifically students of the Rabbi Isaac Luria, which is our Haria, which means the lion, as a way of greeting the Shanika, the divine presence, and we say the Shabbat Queen. So the Kabbalists explain that the Shabbat night is referred to as the queen as the Eshalah, which is in the Talmud. So we sing the Eshalah to welcome the Shabbat Queen. So it's a way of expressing the gratitude to the women of the house to sing praises on her Friday night after she worked tireless. And I know that the Shabbat is like, there's always that pre-Shabbat prep, and it's like prepping for Thursday and Friday comes. It's like a rush, and you'll trying to get everything done so you can be ready to shut down. And so it's like you get into it, and it's like in the end of that segment. But it's like you can see that she's clearly talking about the same deity. And every Shabbat on Friday night they do this singing and this greeting prayer thing to her. And y'all can go watch that. And this is around time marker 1704, when we can greet the Shabbat Queen in royal fashion. Shalet says she rises when it is still night. She gives food to her household, and then the allotted share to her maidens, which comes from Proverbs 31:15. The blessing of the food and the household comes from Shabbat. Yes, sitting around the Shabbat table and being sung is just a really beautiful and welcoming the Shabbat Queen. You know, we've already lit our candles and we're sitting at the table and we're ready to do Kadosh. We do kitchens and blessings everywhere, wine, and then we sing the Eshalah Shalah. It's like our start. I mean, we've already been in Shul, and we're already said in our prayers, and then we're just continuing on in the welcoming of the Shabbat Queen. So they welcome this deity into their home on the Friday nights. When I saw this, I was like, wow. It goes right along with what I found. And Gino is also found on the Gino the Savior coin, denarius, and this is from 105 BC. I just thought I'd show you that she's also honored on the money from back way before Jesus' time. This is going to get deep, guys. This is a lot of stuff. Okay, when we go talk about pantheon, we're told that it means many gods, and the pantheon building is to many gods. I don't think that's true, because the word they have for many in the Greek text is pan. It is not every would be kath. So pan and theon means God. So this is actually a building to the pan god, or the god of the underworld. Luke 1:27, I think, alludes to this. We have in English in our text, to a virgin espoused to a man whose name was Joseph, of the house of David, and the virgin's name was Mary. Okay, when I looked at the Greek, it says at or near the Pantheon. Right here would have been in Rome. The man, or Andre, whose name was Joseph, of the house of David, and of the Parthenu, which is a maiden, Miriam. So we have actually Miriam, we have Joseph, and the Parthenon was to give a souvenir. He was to give a souvenir. So what it's literally saying is Andre, whose name was also Joseph, was to give a souvenir at the Parthenon, or Pantheon, and he was of the house of David, and the name of the maiden he was giving it to was Miriam. I don't even think this has to do with him being espoused. It had something to do with giving a souvenir, which could have been a betrothal, because the word derives from engagement or betrothal. I meant to say that too. When I was looking at that souvenir thing, it's like I went and looked to see if they had any souvenirs way back then, because I thought, why am I coming up with souvenir? And it's like souvenirs were omnipresent facet of the modern tourism in ancient Mediterranean, and especially the Roman Empire. They had all kinds of souvenirs, and it was a flourishing thing. Archaeology, they've dug up a bunch of them. But I found this article on it, so if y'all want to read that, you're welcome to. But I just wanted to show you that, there was souvenirs. So makes sense. And I kept digging, and it said that the Roman souvenirs were purchased by individuals for whom the objects themselves, the places they commemorated, and relationships. So it probably was a betrothal souvenir that was mentioned in Luke. And it's really interesting, too, about the name Parthenon. The Greek word is an unmarried woman's apartment house, is what it was. And the Parthenon's case seems to have been used at first only for a particular room of the temple. The epithet Parthenos meant maiden or girl, and that's where they got the virgin or unmarried woman. And so the Parthenos has also been applied to the Virgin Mary, Parthenos Maria, they call her in the Latin. So all this ties together. Parthenu ties into and it can also be a surname down here in Luke 127 for Miriam. I looked into that too, and I was very interested in what I found. I think Parthenu was a surname, not a virgin, because Miriam was Herod's wife in real life. Herod faced a volatile situation, exploited to his advantage. Indeed, it was no coincidence that the Romans entrusted the throne of Judea to Herod the Great at the close of 40 BCE, in the year of the Parthian conquest. During the campaign, the Parthians installed Agabus, son of the Aristobulus II, as scion of the Hashemite dynasty, the king of Judea. Herod fled to Rome to use his event to make a bid for kingship. He sought out Antony and underscored the Parthian threat, and threw a bribe for good measures. As the ancient sources make it clear, the strategy worked. The Parthian actions motivated the Senate to make him Herod the Great, king. In this situation, Herod is best seen as a manipulator of Rome's confrontation with Parthia to his own advantage. Well, he married one named Miriam also, and it's like we know that Herod was Jewish, so this plays into the plot of what happened with Herod. It's like Herod and Miriam were families merging. Herod was particularly gifted with military leader and politician, and his power quickly grew. In 42 BC, he solidified his position. Herod, whose Idumean heritage was viewed with suspicion by many Jews, decided to garner more local legitimacy by marrying into the Hashemite family. He was already married to a Jewish woman named Doris, but his second wife, he chose Miriam, the Greek form of the Hebrew name Miriam. See, it's the same name right here. Some call it Miriam, and was the daughter of Alexander, the eldest son of Aristobulus II, and Alexander, daughter of Hyrcanus. In other words, Miriam could claim Hashemite lineage on both her mother and father's side. The betrothal took place when Miriam was around 12. Herod was around 32. In 40 BCE, Judah was briefly retaken by the Romans by Antigonus, the son of Aristobulus, and backing of the Parthians who ruled Persia at the time of Herod, who had taken his father's place as regent, but was declared by Rome to be Judea's rightful king, or Rex. Reconquered Judea on behalf of Rome, retaken Jerusalem in 37 BCE, then he handed Antigonus over to the Romans for execution. In the middle of the siege of Jerusalem, Herod took a break to marry his betrothed bride, Miriam, now 17 years old. Their marriage produced 5 children, some of whom would survive to become the founding members of the Hashemite Herodian family who ruled Judea as the client kings of Rome until 70 CE, until the major thing with the temple. But think about what this is saying for a minute. It's like, this could be the same person. Mary in scriptures could be Herod's wife that Joseph was meeting with the souvenir. This is from Wiki. Miriam II was the third wife of Herod the Great. She was the daughter of Simon Brothus and high priest. Josephus recounts their wedding thus. There was one Simon, a citizen of Jerusalem. Simon, that's the name we know. The son of Brotheus, a citizen of Alexandria, and the priest of the great note there. So Simon was also a priest, which I think Simon Peter was a priest. This man had a daughter who was esteemed the most beautiful woman at that time. When the people of Jerusalem began to speak much in her condemnation, it happened that Herod was much affected with what was said of her, and he saw the damsel. He was smitten with her beauty, yet he entirely rejected the thoughts of using his authority to abuse her, as believing what was the truth, that by doing so he should be stigmatized for violence and tyranny. So he thought it best to take the damsel to wife. And while Simon was a dignity too inferior to be allied with him, but still too considerate to be despised, the governed the inclinations after the most prudent manner. After argumenting the dignity of the family and making them more honorable, so he immediately deprived Jesus, the son of Phav, the high priest, and conferred the dignity on Simon, and so joined in affinity with him by marrying his daughter. She had one child by Herod called Herod II, Herod Brothus, who married his niece Herodias, and by their daughter Salome. Miriam II was implicated in the plot of Antipater against her husband in 4 BC, and as a result Herod divorced her and removed her father, Simon Brothus, as high priest. Additionally, her son Herod II was removed from the line of succession in Herod's last will. Very interesting. And I think Udine was right up here in Italy, right there. Okay. It was first attested in Latin, they say, in 983, but I think it goes way further back than that. It was a pre-Roman origin, Indo-European, Udine. I think it's the same thing, and I think that's probably where Herod was from. I'm just giving y'all a heads up. I think that's it. See, Rome would be right here, and he reclaimed Rome for, reclaimed this area for Rome, I think. And it's very interesting. I mean, when you see some of the ancient art that's there, this is about from 1st century too. It's the Star of David's, and you've got angels and wreaths. This is like a bath or a well. And then you've got the eagle for the coat of arms, and it's called Aquilia. But I think that was actually Udine right in this area. This is in the Museum Aquilia in Italy. It's a display of the mosaic floor. It's from 1st century Star of David. And there were Stars of David discovered by the archaeologist Miriam Evezar. And see, that's a Latin name. It's like, I think all this is tied together. And I think that right up in here is where Udine or Judea was. There, and I think some of them were down here too. I'll show that later in another video. And in that artwork mosaic, we find these things that go along with the Yuval, which is the date palm and one of the 4 species used for the holiday festival of Sukkot, and the species of the myrtle, the willow tree. They're bound together in this thing here. That looks very similar to what that's holding there. And the Torah mentions the commandments to obtain a Yuval during the Sukkot holiday, and it's in Leviticus 23:40. You shall take on the first fruits of the goodly trees, the branches of the palm trees, and the bros thick trees, and willows of the brook, and you shall rejoice before Yahweh your God 7 days. And in the oral Torah, the Mishnah comments that the biblical command for the Yova, along with other 3 species for the holiday of Sukkot. And it was also done in the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. But this is, to me, this looks just like what that is. Jewish Sukkot stuff. Have other evidence in Italy also of this theme. It's like on the floor design found in the house of Jupiter or Yahweh in Pompeii, you have these winged half serpent, half blazed up, angel looking scorpion thing. See the legs? One of them looks like a scorpion, then you have an angel, then you have another angel coming down with something. They say it's Osana. It's characterized by the hunter Orion, the son of the sea god Neptune. But I don't see anything tying this to Neptune here. To me, it speaks more like about Deuteronomy 8:15, who led you through the great and terrifying wilderness with its fiery serpents and scorpions and thirsty ground where there was no water, and brought you out of the water, out of the flinty rock. And but this Osan also goes back to Jupiter, because it says that it explains that it angered the goddess Gaia, sending out scorpions to kill him. But Jupiter, god of the sky and thunder, gives Orion wings like a butterfly and leaves the crystalline, and he arises above Earth, represented by a snake, into the firmament, metamorphizing into the constellations. I think all this is tied exactly together with Scripture. Something else I think is curious in front of the Pantheon is there is a mastaba, a pillar that's the grave of Rachel. If you look in Genesis 35:20, and Jacob set a pillar or mastaba upon the grave, that the pillar or mastaba of Rachel's grave is there unto this day. In other words, they're telling us it'll still be there. And the reason I think that the Pantheon is where this might be resting is because both of her children were evidently from Pan, because they were both satyrs in the Hebrew text of the Old Testament. And Mastaba meaning house of stability or house of eternity or eternal house in ancient Egyptian is what it meant. And it's like, it was like a monument to somebody that had passed away. But I believe that's it right there, right in front of the Pantheon in Rome, Italy. Talk a little bit about the Vatican. Vaticor is connected, the etymology is connected to Vaticor, which means to prophesy. And it's from the Latin. Vaticani is the Vatican, Vatican City, the papacy. They consider a lot of different things. But you can see all the spellings here: Vaticano, Vaticano, Vaticane, Vatici, Vaticum. Even depending on what case it is, it has different spellings. And it's an alternate form of Vaticanus also. It's from the word vates, which is a seer, a soothsayer, or a prophet, and kano, which means to sing, recite, or foretell, or predict, or prophesy. So this goes right along with the Old Testament too, because it's full of prophets and prophesying. So Vatican's place comes from the Latin verb vaticor, which is to prophesy or foresee. It's a place where the vates, or the prophets, made their arguments. So the Vatican is the hill of the prophets, is what it literally means. Okay, and you know Jesus told us in Luke 13:34, O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, which killest the prophets and stonest them that are sent to thee, how often I would have gathered thy children together as a hen doth gather her brood under her wings, and ye would not. So he's talking about a place of the prophets also. Where does this come from? You know, in our Old Testament, the Greek, according to the text of the Codex Vatica. Okay, Vatica is the same as Vatica in the Latin, and she goddess of the underworld. This is an image of the Etruscan goddess Batica, right here with the horns. That's her. Who kept the necropolis of the city of the dead, which is interesting, where the Vatican is today. And, you know, down under the altar and on in St. Peter's is all those crypts with the popes, and Peter's bones are right under the altar. And then you've got other tombs down in there. That's exactly where this came from. And we call our Old Testament Septuagint the text of the Codex Vatican. And this is Vatican. This gets very interesting. Because in John 5:2 we have, now there is at Jerusalem by the sheep pool, which is called in Hebrew tongue Bethesda, having 5 porches. This is where the guy wanted to be let down in the water when the water stirred up so he could be healed, and then Jesus heals him. Okay, John is telling us where he's at. The word in Greek is probatikos. Okay, pro means in front of, and batikos is the Batikanos. Okay, because historical linguists will tell you, like in the Latin tongue to the English, a lot of times the V and the B are interchangeable. So this B translates to a V, and the K to a C. So that's Vatikanos. They were in front of the Vatican, this place that had the healing. Pretty interesting, huh? And this is a little write-up on the changes from B to V, you know. So if you want to read it, you can. And here's an old map from 1886 denoting the ancient iniquity of Rome. And you can see the campus Vaticanus is here. And another old map I have has it stretching all the way across. But right here would be where that temple was. Right there on that island. This is just a little bit more close up so you can read it. And you'll notice here, this is Nero Circus was right here. There's the Mount Vaticanus and the Mausoleum of Hadriana. Then when you look down here, here's the island with the temple and the place with the where the water stirred up. Looking in context, we have after that there was a feast of the Jews, and Jesus went up to Jerusalem. Now there was at Jerusalem, but in front of the Vatican, a pool, which is called in the Hebrew tongue Bethesda, having 5 porches. And you'll see this Ager Vaticanus on this map. That is the Sheepgate Field, or the Vatican Field, one of the two. And I'm going to stop it here, I think, and because we're at 2 hours, and I'm probably going to take the rest of the slides over and do another section, so so that we don't get too much on one video. I hope that makes sense to y'all. So I hope you've enjoyed what you've seen so far, and I hope it makes sense. And you're starting to see what I'm seeing, that actually Jerusalem is actually Rome. Thank you for watching.